On a quiet Minnesota ridge, a former Navy SEAL was trapped beneath fallen stone. His German shepherd, Sable, stood beside him with blood spreading across her gray cream fur. He had survived war, loss, and years of silence. But this time he could not save himself, so he tied a strip of rescue tape to Sable's collar with trembling hands. "Go, Sable. Bring someone back." Sable ran to the one woman who had sworn never to answer another call for rescue. "If this story touches you, tell us where you're watching from. And stay until the porch light comes on." Birchwater, Minnesota woke beneath a northern summer light so clean it seemed almost merciful. The lake lay flat as blue glass behind the old boat sheds, holding the reflection of white pines, gulls, and a sky washed pale at the edges. Along the road that climbed toward Sunbreak Ridge, wild lupine leaned in violet waves, their blossoms trembling whenever the wind came down from the higher woods. The houses were small, weather-worn, and stubborn. The docks creaked. The coffee at Maeve Calder's lakeside diner tasted like it had been brewed by someone who believed sleep was a moral weakness. It was not a dark place. That was the trouble. Dark places explained a man like Alden Cross. A dark place could excuse the way he scanned windows before walking past them, the way his hand sometimes tightened around nothing, the way silence at 3 a.m. could turn his skin cold. But Birchwater was bright. Birchwater smelled of cedar boards, lake water, cut grass, and hot bread. It made old wounds look impolite, like muddy boots on a church floor. Alden lived at the edge of the lake in a converted boat repair shop with peeling white paint and a green metal roof. He was 47, tall and broad through the shoulders, though not in the polished way of men who still measured themselves by mirrors and uniforms. His strength had settled into him like old timber, quiet, useful, hard to impress. His face was long and weathered with high cheekbones, a nose that had once been broken and healed slightly off-center, and gray-blue eyes touched with a faint amber warmth when he forgot to guard them. He did not forget often. His hair, ash-brown with early silver at the temples, had grown longer than any Navy barber would have tolerated. A short, uneven beard shadowed his jaw most days. Not because he liked the look, but because shaving required standing too long before a mirror. Mirrors asked questions. Alden preferred machines. Machines, at least, could be taken apart. That morning he stood beside a half-stripped cedar canoe, wearing a faded gray Henley beneath an old red and black checkered wool jacket. The jacket had belonged to no branch of service, carried no patch, and made him look less like a soldier than a man who knew how to fix a broken dock in bad weather. His tobacco-brown canvas work pants were dusted with sawdust at the knees. A folding knife with a walnut handle sat in his pocket, familiar as a pulse. At his feet, Sable watched a gull steal a piece of toast from the dock rail. Sable was a 5-year-old German shepherd, but not the common black and tan kind people expected. Her coat was smoke gray along the back and cream across the chest, pale as ash brushed with morning light. Her ears stood tall, except the left one tilted outward when she listened hard, giving her the look of a judge pretending not to be amused. Around her neck was an old moss-green leather collar with a small metal tag shaped like a drop of water. Stay. Alden had engraved the word himself. He had meant it as a command for her. Over time, it had become something closer to a prayer for him. Sable looked away from the gull and back to Alden. "I saw it," he said. "No need to file a report." Sable blinked. "Yes, theft is serious, but the suspect has wings." The dog huffed through her nose and lowered herself near the open shop door, where the sun made a warm rectangle across the wooden floor. People in Birchwater knew pieces of Alden. They knew he had once been a Navy SEAL, though no one said it too loudly. They knew he could repair a marine engine by sound, could splice rope with one hand, could fix old radios that other men called dead. They knew he paid his bills on time, rarely drank, and left scraps out for the birds even while complaining about them like unpaid tenants. Only Sable knew the hours between 2 and 4 in the morning. Only Sable knew how Alden sometimes came awake with his breath trapped in his throat, his hand reaching under the bed for a weapon that was no longer there. Only Sable knew the names he said before he knew he was saying them. On those nights, she did not bark. She did not paw wildly or panic. She climbed onto the bed with the grave patience of a creature older than language and pressed her head against his chest until his breathing found hers in, out, a body alive beside a body that had forgotten how. The phone rang while Alden was tightening a brass fitting. He let it ring twice, not because he was dramatic, but because abrupt sounds still annoyed some buried part of him. Sable lifted her head. "Cross," he answered. "Alden, it's Harlan." Harlan Voss never wasted syllables when a problem had already done that for him. He was 61, broad and red-faced from years outdoors, with a silver mustache and the permanent expression of a man mentally checking weather charts. He ran the Birchwater Volunteer Rescue Team with a devotion that sometimes looked like irritation. He had lost a man years ago on a bad call, and ever since then he treated risk like a debt collector at the door. "The repeater on Sunbreak is dead," Harlan said. "Storm must have knocked it out last night." Alden glanced beyond the shop door toward the ridge line, where the pines rose blue-green in the morning haze. "You try the backup channel?" "Twice. Clay tried from the South Road, too. Nothing. If somebody gets hurt up there today, we'll be shouting into soup cans." Alden set down the fitting. "You want me to look at it?" "I want you to say no if your leg's bad." "My leg's always bad." That wasn't the question. Alden looked down. His right knee had already started its dull electric ache, the kind that woke with the weather before he did. He flexed his hand once. Sable sat up, watching him. "I'll take a kit," he said. "Should be a loose connector or water in the housing. You don't have to be a hero." The words landed wrong. Alden's face did not change, but something in him went very still. Hero was one of those words people used when they wanted death to wear clean clothes. "I'm fixing a radio, Harlan." There was a pause. Harlan understood more than he said. "Road by Birch Creek is soft after the rain. Don't take the truck past the lower bend." "I know." "And Alden?" "What?" "Take the dog." Alden looked at Sable. Her tail tapped once against the floor as if she had been expecting official recognition. "She's listening," Alden said. "Good. She's got more sense than you." Harlan hung up before Alden could defend himself, which was rude but efficient. Half an hour later, Alden climbed the road toward Sunbreak Ridge with a tool bag over one shoulder, a coil of utility rope across his chest, 2 bottles of water, and Sable trotting ahead. He had driven the truck as far as the lower bend, then continued on foot where the track narrowed and the mud still held the shine of last night's rain. The woods smelled alive. Wet bark, ferns, warm stone. The storm had washed the dust from everything and left the world bright enough to seem newly made. Sunlight broke through the pines in long, slanting bars. Sable moved through them like a gray-cream shadow stitched with gold. Stitched with gold. Alden tried to hate the beauty of it and failed. That was another thing no one told you about surviving. Sometimes beauty hurt worse than horror. Horror made sense. Beauty kept asking why you were not grateful. He stopped once near a lookout where the lake flashed far below between trees. His leg pulsed. He took a drink of water and watched Sable sniff at a patch of disturbed earth near the trail. "What have you got?" Sable's left ear tilted. Then came the sound. Not thunder. Not a branch. Stone shifting. Alden turned toward a narrow side trail that cut away from the main ridge path. A moment later, a voice echoed through the trees. "Help! Hey! Somebody!" Sable was already moving. Sable, wait! She stopped, but barely. Her body leaned toward the sound, every line of her alert and burning with purpose. Alden listened. Another cry came, strained and adult, followed by the sliding clatter of smaller rocks. He touched the radio clipped to his belt. "Harlan, this is Cross. Possible injury off the east spur, half-mile below repeater." Static answered. He adjusted the channel. Nothing. The dead repeater sat somewhere above them on the ridge, useless as a bell without a tongue. Alden exhaled slowly. The old part of him began counting without permission. Distance, terrain, weather, available equipment, dog condition, his own bad leg, unknown number of injured, unknown stability of slope. He could still walk away and bring help. He could. Sable looked back at him. That was the unfair thing about dogs. They did not understand excuses dressed as wisdom. They only knew someone had called out, and Alden had heard. "Fine," he muttered. "But if this turns stupid, I'm blaming you." Sable took that as approval and led the way. The east spur was narrow and half swallowed by brush. About 200 yards down, the trail broke open beside a shallow rock cut, where last night's rain had loosened the slope. A woman in hiking pants and a yellow windbreaker knelt beside a man pinned awkwardly between a fallen sapling and a spill of stone. Both were adults, maybe surveyors or trail volunteers. A map case lay torn nearby, papers damp and fluttering. The woman looked up. She was bleeding from a cut above one eyebrow. "Thank God! He can't move his ankle. I think it's broken." Alden's gaze moved over the slope first, not the injured man. Fresh slide, unstable upper shelf, water still running through the stone seam. Bad. "Were there only two of you?" "Yes." "Any head injury? Trouble breathing?" "No, I don't think so." Alden crouched near the man. Late 30s, pale, trying not to groan. The ankle was trapped below a flat rock, not crushed but wedged badly. "What's your name?" "Peter." "Alden, this is Sable. She outranks both of us." Peter gave a thin, terrified laugh. That was good. Laughing meant air. Alden worked quickly. He gave the woman a bottle of water, checked Peter's pulse, then looped rope around the fallen sapling to create leverage. He did not try to lift the rock straight. That was how amateurs got people killed. Instead, he shifted the angle by inches, using the sapling's tension and a smaller stone as a brace. Sable stayed close, but not in the way, eyes moving between Alden and the slope. "Easy," Alden said. "When I say pull, you pull him back, not up, back. Understand?" The woman nodded, white-knuckled. Alden wedged his shoulder low, ignoring the spike of pain in his right leg. "Ready?" Peter clenched his jaw. "Now!" The rock shifted just enough. The woman pulled. Peter cried out as his ankle came free, but he came free. For one clean second, relief entered the world, then Sable barked. Not loud, not frantic, one sharp warning. Alden looked up. The upper shelf moved. "Go!" he shouted. The woman dragged Peter backward with a strength terror had lent her. Alden shoved them both toward the safer edge of the trail. A scatter of stones came first, bouncing and snapping through brush. Then the seam above the cut gave way with a wet, grinding roar. Alden turned to move. His bad leg slipped in the mud. Sable lunged toward him. "No!" The slide hit like a door slammed by God. Not all of it. If the whole shelf had come down, there would have been no story left to tell. But enough stone and broken earth crashed into the cut to knock Alden sideways. Something struck his ribs. Another weight drove into his right hip and thigh, pinning him beneath a flat slab that settled with a sound so final it seemed to close a book. Sable yelped. Then silence, except for pebbles ticking down the slope. Alden opened his eyes to sunlight. For a moment he saw nothing else, just sunlight caught in dust, turning the air gold. His first thought was stupidly calm. bad. His second was worse. Sable. He forced his head to turn. Pain tore white across his vision. Sable stood several feet away, shaking, a deep cut along her left shoulder, staining the cream-gray fur dark. She held one front paw slightly lifted, but she was standing, alive. "Good girl," he breathed. Peter and the woman were farther down the trail, shaken but clear of the slide. The woman stared at Alden with both hands over her mouth. "Go," Alden said. She didn't move. His voice hardened, not loud but shaped by old command. "Take him down the trail. Birch Creek Road, get Harlan Voss. Tell him East Spur secondary slide, one trapped. Go now!" Peter tried to speak, but pain folded him. The woman nodded, tears cutting clean lines through dust on her face. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Move." She moved. Alden let his head fall back against the dirt. The slab across his leg and hip was heavy enough that he could not feel everything below it. That frightened him more than pain would have. Sable limped to him. "No," he said softly. "No, don't come close." She ignored him because loyalty had never been famous for obedience. She pressed her nose against his hand. Alden tried the radio. The casing was cracked. He thumbed the button anyway. Static hissed once, then died. Above him the ridge gleamed in the sun. The broken repeater waited uselessly at the top of the mountain, and the bridge at Birch Creek was soft, maybe impassable. Even if the woman reached help, it could take hours. Alden knew what hours could do to blood, bone, and weather. His fingers moved clumsily toward his jacket pocket. The old red and black wool was torn near the hem. Inside, he found the strip of reflective rescue tape Harlan always made volunteers carry, more habit than hope. Sable watched him, panting. Alden's hand shook as he tied the strip to her moss-green collar, just above the little tag. "Stay." The word flashed in the sun like a cruel joke. He swallowed, and for the first time that morning, his face broke. Not from fear of dying, not exactly. He had made peace with death too many times for that, but sending Sable away felt like tearing the last warm thing from his own chest. He cupped her face with one dusty hand. "Find help, girl." Sable stared at him. No arguing. Her ears lowered. Her amber eyes held his, stubborn and wounded and furious. Blood darkened the fur on her shoulder. She took one step back, then came forward again, pressing her forehead against his palm. Alden closed his eyes for half a second. "Please," he whispered. That did what the command could not. Sable stepped away. She looked once toward the trail, once back at him, every muscle trembling with the terrible intelligence of love. And then she turned and ran downhill through the bright stones and lupine, limping but fast, the reflective tape flashing at her collar like a small piece of captured sun. Alden watched until the trees took her. Only then did he allow himself to breathe badly. Above Sunbreak Ridge, the morning remained beautiful. The lake shone far below. Birds called from the pines, as if the world had not just asked a dog to choose between staying with the man she loved and leaving him so he might live. Sable did not run blindly. Pain made the world smaller, but scent made it clear. The trail below Sunbreak Ridge split into ribbons of mud, pine needles, and crushed lupine. Blood warmed the fur along her left shoulder, then cooled as the wind found it. Every few strides her front leg faltered. Every few strides she nearly went down. But Alden's hand was still in her memory, rough with sawdust and stone dust, trembling against her face. "Find help, girl." Sable knew help was not a word. Help was a place. Help was a smell. Help was the sound of metal chimes moving in the wind near the old rest stop below the ridge. She had been there before. Alden had once walked her past the Frost place on a cool morning when fog lay over the lower meadow. He had stopped at the wooden pump beside the trail and let her drink from a dented tin bowl. A woman had stepped from the greenhouse then, wearing garden gloves and a gray cream cardigan. her brown hair tied low with silver at the temples. She had not rushed toward Sable. She had crouched at a respectful distance and waited. "Pretty girl," the woman had said. Sable had studied her. The woman smelled of lavender, antiseptic, old wool, and grief. Dogs knew grief. Not the human story of it, perhaps, but the shape. Grief changed breath. It made hands hesitate before touching. It made a house too quiet even when bees worked in the flowers. So Sable ran toward that smell now. The woods thinned, sunlight opened. The Frost farm appeared below the slope like a small country from a gentler myth. Yellow daisies along the fence, violet lupine near the ditch. Lavender beds alive with bees and a long greenhouse shining under the northern sun. A red barn leaned slightly at one shoulder, knee shoulder. The white farmhouse had blue trim and a porch with wind chimes made from old brass shell casings. Each one polished by weather until it caught light like small bells of memory. Sable stumbled through the open gate. The chimes moved. On the greenhouse roof, Nadine Frost was kneeling with a hammer in one hand and a strip of flashing in the other. She was 49, strong in the practical way of women who carried feed bags, grief, and groceries without asking which one weighed most. A faded mustard windbreaker lay across a ladder below her. Her pale denim shirt was rolled to the elbows. Dirt marked one cheek where she had pushed hair from her eyes. When she saw Sable, the hammer stopped in midair. "Well," Nadine said, voice dry from habit more than feeling, "you're not the mailman." Sable did not bark. She did not circle. She did not collapse. She limped straight to the ladder, caught the cuff of Nadine's work pants gently between her teeth, and pulled. Nadine's expression changed, not dramatically. She was not a woman who gave fear the satisfaction of a grand entrance, but something sharpened in her eyes, green-gray and suddenly very awake. "Easy," she said, climbing down. "Easy, girl." Sable released her, turned toward the ridge, took 3 limping steps, then looked back. Her body shook. Blood had soaked a dark crescent into the cream-gray fur of her shoulder. Above it, tied crookedly to her moss-green collar, a strip of reflective rescue tape flashed in the sun. Nadine saw the tape. Then she saw the tag beneath it. "Stay." For a moment the farm went silent around her. Not truly silent. The bees still worried the lavender. The wind still moved the chimes. A crow still complained from the fence line. But Nadine stopped hearing the ordinary world. She knew that tape. Harlan Voss made every volunteer carry it. Alden Cross carried it too, because Alden Cross still prepared for trouble the way some people prepared coffee. Nadine had not spoken more than 10 sentences to Alden in the past year. He came by sometimes to tighten the pump handle near the rest stop or repair the hinge on the first aid shed door. He was polite, distant, and gone before gratitude could reach him. The kind of man who left help behind like contraband. And now his dog stood bleeding in her yard. "Where is he?" Nadine asked. Sable turned toward the ridge again. The old part of Nadine, the trained part, the part she had buried under soil and flower beds and years of refusing emergency calls, rose before she could stop it. She moved, not fast at first, precisely. She led Sable into the first aid shed beside the greenhouse. It was a narrow, whitewashed room that smelled of mint, gauze, iodine, and cedar shelves. Hikers knew it as a place to find water, bandages, tick tweezers, and sometimes a note taped to the cabinet that read, "If you steal the good scissors, may your socks always be wet." Nadine had written that note after losing 3 pairs in one summer. "Up," she said, patting the old examination table. Sable hesitated, eyes fixed on the open door. "I know. He's up there." Nadine kept her voice level. "But if you bleed out in my yard, I'll have to explain that to him, and something tells me he'll take it personally." Sable made a low sound but allowed Nadine to help her onto the table. The wound was deep but clean-edged, likely torn by sharp rock. No spurting blood, no obvious broken bone. Bad, but not impossible. Nadine clipped fur away with old trauma shears, flushed the wound, packed gauze, and wrapped a pressure bandage snug around the shoulder. Her hands did not shake until she reached for the tape. Then she saw them, her own fingers. Older than they had been in the field hospital. Knuckles thicker, a small scar across the left thumb from a greenhouse pane. Wedding ring still on, though Tobias had been gone 8 years. Tobias would have known what to say to the dog. He had always known what to say to frightened creatures, dogs, men, her once. Nadine closed the bandage, perhaps tighter than necessary. Sable touched her wrist with her nose. The gentleness of it undid something small and dangerous inside her. "No," Nadine whispered, though she did not know whether she spoke to the dog, to memory, or to the house behind her. "Don't look at me like that." Sable looked anyway. Nadine grabbed the radio from the charging dock and stepped outside. She raised the antenna, turned toward the ridge, and keyed the mic. "Harlan, this is Frost. Do you copy?" Static. She tried again. "Harlan Voss. This is Nadine Frost at the lower ridge. I have Alden Cross's dog here, injured, wearing rescue tape. I need status." For several seconds, nothing answered but the chimes. Then a broken voice came through, chopped into pieces by distance and the dead repeater. "Frost, say again. Harlan, Sable is here. She's hurt. Alden sent her down." Static cracked. "Bridge out at Birch Creek. Team delayed. East spur unstable. Woman came down, reporting slide. Cross trapped." The words dropped in fragments, each one heavier than the last. Nadine closed her eyes. Cross trapped. Ridge unstable. Team delayed. The old world opened beneath the new one. For 8 years, she had built her days carefully. Coffee, greenhouse, pump repair, lavender harvest, fence mending. The first aid shed, stocked but quiet, a life measured in small tasks that did not bleed too much. Inside the farmhouse, just beyond the kitchen door, Tobias Frost's boots stood on the mat. They were clean. That was the terrible part. Not muddy, not torn, not abandoned in haste. Cleaned by Nadine after the funeral because she had needed something to do with her hands. Dark brown leather, creased at the ankles, placed side by side as if Tobias had stepped out of them before dinner and might complain any minute that she had overcooked the beans. Tobias had been a former SEAL, too. A man with laugh lines, scarred hands, and the ridiculous belief that no call for help should be left unanswered if his body could still move toward it. That belief had carried him across oceans. That belief had carried him away from her. Nadine looked back at Sable. The dog had come out of the shed despite the bandage, standing in the yard with her injured shoulder held stiff. She swayed once, caught herself, and faced the ridge, not the farmhouse, not the shade, not safety. The ridge. Nadine felt anger rise, sudden and hot, not at Sable, not even at Alden, at the pattern of it, at brave men and loyal dogs, and the awful way love kept turning into marching orders. "You should lie down," she told the dog. Sable did not move. "You're bleeding through my best wrap." Sable's left ear tilted outward. It was such a grave, stubborn expression that Nadine almost laughed. The sound caught in her throat and came out broken. For a moment she saw Tobias on the last morning. Not the way people liked to remember him, shining and noble in photographs. She saw him exhausted, unshaven, one shoulder already bothering him, standing at the back door while sunlight hit the floorboards. He had kissed her forehead and said, "I'll be careful." She had answered, "No, you won't." He had smiled then, not because she was wrong, because she knew him. Nadine set the radio down. She went into the farmhouse. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon soap and dried thyme. Tobias's boots waited by the door. For years she had stepped around them like one steps around a sleeping animal. She never moved them, never wore them, Never let anyone suggest putting them away. They were not a shrine, she told herself. They were simply boots, a lie but a tidy one. She stood over them now. Outside, Sable gave one sharp bark. Nadine flinched. Impatient, she muttered. Just like him. She reached above the coat rack and took down the old medical field bag. Moss green canvas faded at the seams, heavier than memory had made it. Inside were pressure dressings, a tourniquet, trauma shears, splints, clotting gauze, pain medication, a headlamp, gloves, and an emergency blanket still folded in its original square. She added a coil of rope from the mudroom, 2 bottles of water, a flashlight, and the keys to the truck. Then she paused. Her hand went to the small watch hanging from a chain at her neck, tucked beneath her shirt, Tobias's pocket watch. It had stopped at 5:17, though no one could tell her if that meant morning or evening. She had never fixed it. Time had stopped once. She had built a life around not asking it to move. Slowly, Nadine bent and placed her palm on the top of Tobias's boots. It was not permission she asked. It was not goodbye. It was an acknowledgement. The past had opened the door, and this time she was walking through it with her eyes open. When she stepped back outside, Sable was waiting beside the truck. "Of course," Nadine said. "You've promoted yourself to supervisor." She shrugged into the mustard windbreaker, slung the medical bag over her shoulder, and helped Sable into the passenger side. Sable tried to jump and nearly fell. Nadine caught her under the ribs. "Don't make me regret liking you." Sable panted in her face. "Your breath is not helping your case." The truck engine coughed twice before turning over. Nadine backed out fast enough to send gravel spitting from the tires, then turned onto the dirt road that climbed toward Sunbreak Ridge. Sable stood on the seat despite Nadine's order to lie down. Front paws braced, eyes locked on the windshield. The reflective strip at her collar flashed with each bump. Nadine drove past Lavender, past the pump station, past the sign warning hikers that Sunbreak Ridge trails could become unstable after rain. The road narrowed quickly beneath the pines. Branches scraped both sides of the truck. Mud sucked at the tires where water had crossed the track. Far below, Birchwater Lake shone blue and innocent between the trees. The radio spat static from the dashboard. "Harlan," Nadine called. "I'm heading up Lower Ridge Road. Sable is with me. Give me your position." The answer came weak. "Frost, don't go past the washout. Wait for team." "No." The word surprised even her. She had said no to many things in 8 years. No to returning to hospital work. No to memorial speeches. No to support groups where strangers used the phrase "moving on" as if grief were furniture. But this no was different. It was not a wall. It was a door opening. "I'm closest," she said. "I have medical gear. You're delayed. Tell me what I'm driving into." Static, then Harlan's voice, rough with worry. "Ground's bad. East Spur took a secondary slide. Don't try extraction alone. I'm not an idiot." A pause. "Never said you were." "You implied it with tone." Despite everything, Harlan gave a short, strained breath that might have been a laugh. "Cross is pinned. Unknown severity. One civilian made it down with another injured party. They're sending Clay from the south track on foot. I'm coming around the long way with rope and a backboard." "How long?" "Too long." Nadine's fingers tightened on the wheel. Sable whined. "I know," Nadine said softly. The dog pressed her nose to the cracked window, breathing in the trail. She shifted, favoring her bandaged shoulder. Nadine glanced at the spreading red beneath the white wrap. "You're going to tear that open." Sable ignored her. "Fine. Heroism runs on poor listening skills. Noted." The truck lurched over a rut. Nadine's medical bag slid across the floorboards and bumped her boot. For a few minutes she drove in silence, and the silence filled with Tobias. Not as a ghost. Nadine did not believe in such easy mercies. He came as memory came, inconvenient, vivid, carrying details no one else would care about. The way he tapped 2 fingers against the steering wheel when thinking. The way he called every dog sir or ma'am regardless of gender. The way he once told her that courage was mostly embarrassment endured in public. At the next bend, a fallen branch blocked half the road. Nadine braked hard, jumped out, dragged it aside with more anger than strength, and climbed back in. Sable stared at her. "What?" Nadine said. "I meant to do it gracefully. The branch refused." The road steepened. The truck could go no farther beyond the old washout where rain had carved a brown wound across the track. Nadine stopped, killed the engine, and listened. Somewhere above them, a faint sound carried through the trees, a man's voice, maybe only the wind. Sable heard it too. The dog turned toward the ridge, body trembling. Nadine took the medical bag, rope, and flashlight. She opened the passenger door. Sable climbed down badly, stumbled, then steadied herself. Nadine looked at the blood-dark bandage, then at the steep trail. "You should stay." Sable began limping uphill. "Of course," Nadine said, following. "Why would anyone listen to the woman with the medical bag?" The sun moved through the pines ahead of them, gold and broken. The ridge waited above, bright as a promise, and dangerous as one too. Nadine Frost climbed after the wounded dog, carrying the tools she had sworn never to need again. And with every step, the old fear rose beside her. This time, she did not let it lead. The climb from the washout to the east spur was not far by map. Maps lied politely. They made distance look clean, as if a trail were only a line and not mud. Loose stone, wet roots, breath, pain, and a wounded dog refusing every reasonable suggestion offered by medical authority. Nadine Frost followed Sable through the white pines, one hand gripping the strap of the old medical field bag, the other catching saplings whenever the slope tried to take her footing. The sun fell through the branches in bright, broken pieces. It shone on fern tips, on exposed roots, on the red smear slowly darkening Sable's bandage. "Slow down," Nadine said. Sable did not slow down. Of course not. Why would the bleeding patient listen to the woman carrying the bandages? Sable's left ear tilted backward, acknowledging the complaint without accepting its authority. That small motion nearly undid Nadine. It was too much like Tobias's half-smile when he knew she was right, but had already decided to do the foolish thing. A man could leave the earth, apparently, and still send his worst habits home inside a dog. The trail narrowed. The ground ahead had changed color, no longer the brown-black of pine soil, but a fresh, raw gray where stone and wet clay had opened under the rain. Dust hung in the air, though the day was clear. Nadine smelled crushed rock before she saw the slide, then she heard him. Not a shout. A breath dragged over pain. Sable broke into a limping run. Nadine pushed through a screen of young birch and stopped. The scene below looked impossibly peaceful at first glance. A low cut in the hillside curved beneath 2 white pines, their trunks rising like pale pillars on either side of a natural stone shelf. Wildflowers shivered along the rim. Sunlight drifted through the dust and turned the air gold, almost holy, as if some careless old god had poured blessing over the wrong place. Then Nadine saw Alden Cross. He lay half on his side beneath the edge of a flat slab of stone, his right leg and hip trapped under its weight. His red and black checkered wool jacket was torn across one shoulder. Dust had turned his ash-brown hair almost white in places. One arm was free, the hand open against the dirt. His face had gone the color of old paper, and every breath seemed to cost him more than pride would allow him to admit. His eyes were closed. Sable reached him first and shoved her nose into his palm. Alden's fingers twitched. "Hey!" Nadine called, already moving. "Alden Cross, don't you dare make me climb all this way for a corpse!" His eyelids dragged open. For one disoriented second he looked through her, not at her. His gaze was somewhere else, far beyond the pines, beyond Minnesota, beyond the bright, harmless day. Then focus returned, thin but present. Nadine? Good, you know my name. That means your brain is still paying rent. His mouth moved like he might have laughed if his ribs had allowed it. Sable pressed closer. Alden's eyes shifted to the dog, and whatever discipline he had left cracked open at once. She's bleeding. Yes, Nadine said, dropping beside him. So are you. Try not to be jealous. Sable, I rapped her. She led me here. She's conscious, stubborn, and rude about medical advice. I assume she learned that from you. His hand found Sable's muzzle. The dog lowered herself carefully beside him, despite Nadine's warning hiss. Nadine set the medical bag down and began her assessment, and she had imagined many times over 8 years that if she ever returned to emergency care, it would feel like falling through a trapdoor. It did not. It felt worse. It felt familiar. Gloves, airway, breathing, pulse, skin temperature, bleeding. The old sequence rose in her hands before memory could argue. A field hospital did not come back as drama. It came back as order. Alden's breathing was shallow. He favored the left side, possible rib fractures. The right leg was pinned from mid-thigh downward beneath stone and compacted clay. No obvious spurting arterial bleed, thank God, but the pressure was dangerous. His boot was visible, angled wrong enough to make Nadine's stomach tighten. You feel your foot? She asked. Alden swallowed. Some. Some is not a medical term. Then no. She glanced up at him. He looked ashamed of the answer, as if numbness were a personal failure. Can you move your toes? A long pause. No. All right. He heard what she did not say. The slab was not huge enough to crush him instantly, but it was heavy enough to steal time. Nerve damage, circulation compromise, internal bleeding possible. Shock already circling the edges of him like a wolf that had learned patience. Nadine cut open the lower hem of his jacket, checked his side, and found bruising blooming dark beneath his ribs. She pressed gently. Alden's jaw locked. That hurts, she said. Very observant. Pain sarcasm, excellent. You may live long enough to annoy someone tomorrow. She packed gauze against a cut along his forearm and tightened a wrap above it. Then she pulled a folded emergency blanket from her bag and tucked it around his upper body as much as the stone allowed. His eyes kept drifting shut. No sleeping, Nadine said. Wasn't. You were considering it with enthusiasm. His lips parted, a breath, then another. Sable whined, low and quiet. Alden turned his head. Hey girl, stay. The tag at her collar caught the light. Stay. Nadine saw it, and something inside her twisted. A command, a plea, a word engraved for a dog that had become somehow an instruction to a man. She reached for the radio clipped to her bag. Harlan, this is Frost. I found him. Static hissed. Then Harlan's voice broke through in pieces. Status? Alive. Pinned under a flat slab, right leg and hip. Breathing shallow, possible rib injury, reduced sensation in the lower right foot. Sable has a shoulder laceration, wrapped but bleeding through. Location is east spur below the stone shelf near twin white pines. A pause, then quieter. Can you extract? Nadine looked at the slab, looked at the slope above it. Fresh cracks ran through the clay seam like dark veins. No, not alone. Good, Harlan said at once. Do not try to lift to see. Repeat, do not try to lift. That whole shelf may be resting under tension. I can see that. Clay is coming from the south track on foot. I'm taking the long trail with rope and backboard. Bridge is out for vehicles. Best estimate? The static swallowed him. Harlan? Nothing. Nadine lowered the radio. Alden's eyes had opened again. How long? Long enough for you to keep breathing out of spite. How long? She did not answer quickly enough. He understood. Take Sable down. No. Nadine. The sound of his voice saying her name with that much pain in it made the air tighten. He was not commanding now. He was pleading. That was harder. The slope shifts again, he said, pausing between breaths. You'll both be under it. I noticed the large rocks, yes. Take the dog. I came with the dog. Then leave with her. Nadine kept her hands busy, checking his pulse again. You're confusing me with someone who takes dying men's advice. I'm not dying. Then stop giving instructions like you are. His eyes searched her face. Dust clung to his beard. Beneath the pain and shock, recognition sharpened. You're Tobias's wife. The words landed with no warning. Nadine's hands stilled for half a second, only half. Then she resumed folding gauze because hands could be ordered even when hearts could not. Yes. Alden's eyes closed, but not from sleep, from something older than pain. I should have come, he whispered. Nadine said nothing. To the funeral. His voice thinned. I wrote it 3 times. Couldn't send it. Sable lifted her head, watching him. Nadine tightened the bandage on his forearm. This is not the moment for confession. No. His breath hitched. Might be the only moment. That made her look at him. For years, she had imagined Alden Cross in one of 2 shapes. Coward or ghost. The man who had survived what Tobias had survived, then vanished from the edges of her grief. She had not hated him every day. Hate required more energy than she had. But sometimes when the house was quiet and Tobias's boots stood by the door, she had wondered what kind of man did not come. Now that man lay under stone, white with pain, worried more about his dog than his leg, trying to apologize because he thought death might be near enough to make honesty urgent. Urgent. It would have been easier if he had been smaller inside. I know who you are, Nadine said. His eyes opened. Tobias wrote about you. Not much. He wasn't a novelist. Mostly bad handwriting and worse spelling. Her voice stayed level, but it had edges now. He said you were stubborn, quiet, good under pressure. He also said you once fixed a radio with chewing gum and part of a bootlace, which I assume was either impressive or deeply unsanitary. Alden made a sound that was almost a laugh. It turned into a cough. Pain knifed across his face. Nadine pressed a hand lightly against his shoulder. Easy. He saved me, Alden said. Yes. I never thanked him, right? Nadine looked toward the ridge where sunlight burned along the broken stone. Tobias did not save people so they could spend the rest of their lives writing thank you notes with their blood. Alden's gaze moved to her, startled. For a moment the space between them changed. It did not soften. Not yet. It became less simple. He was not just the man who failed to come. She was not just the woman he had avoided. Between them lay Tobias, not as a saint, not as a wound only, but as a man who had laughed, chosen, risked, annoyed, loved, and left behind more than one unfinished conversation. Sable shifted and tried to rise. No, both Nadine and Alden said at once. The dog froze, offended by the rare unity of human authority. Alden's fingers brushed the dog's cream-gray neck. How bad? Nadine checked the bandage. Bad enough that she needs a vet. Not so bad that she gets to die dramatically on my watch. Sable, he whispered, and the fear in that one word was naked. Not for himself, for her. That fear told Nadine more than any confession could have. Alden Cross might not have believed his own life was worth saving. But his love for Sable was whole, immediate, and terrified. It lived in him without permission from guilt. It was proof there was still a door somewhere inside him not sealed by war. Nadine leaned closer, her voice lower. Listen to me. She made it down the ridge injured. She found me. She climbed back up here because she refused to leave you. That dog has done her part twice. Now you will do yours." His eyes focused on her. "You will breathe when I tell you. You will stay awake when I tell you. You will stop wasting strength trying to arrange your own noble ending." Alden stared at her, and then faintly, "You always this bossy?" "Only with men pinned under geology." For the first time, something like real amusement passed through his face. It vanished quickly. Pain took him again, dark and sudden. His body tensed. His breath shortened to sharp pulls. Nadine saw the signs and moved fast, guiding him. "In through the nose if you can. Out slow." He shook his head once. "Yes," she said. "You can argue after you oxygenate." Sable pushed her nose against his wrist. Alden's fingers curled weakly into her fur. The three of them stayed that way while the ridge settled around them in small sounds. The tick of pebbles, the whisper of grass, the distant call of a bird. Too cheerful for the occasion. Nadine kept one hand near Alden's pulse and the other on the radio. She marked time by his breathing. She marked danger by the slope. Minutes passed. The radio cracked. "Frost, copy?" Nadine snatched it up. "I copy." Harlan's voice came through weak but clearer than before. "Clay is 20 minutes out if the south track holds. I'm 35, maybe more. Listen carefully. No lifting. If his circulation drops further, we may need to relieve pressure, but not without anchor points. I have twin pines above the cut, 15 feet apart. Roots look deep. Don't rig yet, just observe. Any movement in the slab?" Nadine studied the stone. "Settled for now. Upper seam cracked, water still running beneath." "Then keep him warm. Keep him talking. Monitor mental status. If he starts fading, you call me." "He's already fading." Alden's eyes opened. "Rude." Nadine keyed the radio. "Correction. Patient remains irritating." Harlan breathed something that might have been a relieved curse. "That's a good sign." The signal fell away again. Alden's gaze drifted past Nadine toward the trees. "If it shifts." "It hasn't. If it does, I heard this speech already. Nadine." There it was again. Her name not as apology this time, but warning. "If that shelf comes down," he said, "you take Sable and go. Don't wait. Don't try to pull me. Don't—" "I listened to a seal say something like that once." Alden went quiet. Nadine held his gaze. "That time, I listened." Her voice did not rise. It became colder, clearer. "I did what he asked. I stayed behind. I let the door close. I stood in a clean kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and waited for men in uniforms to come tell me bravery had a cost." The wind moved the lupine above them. "I did not like the result." Alden did not answer. There was nothing to say to that. No battlefield word, no veteran's silence, no elegant apology could step across it. Sable lowered her head onto Alden's forearm. Nadine checked the bandage at the dog's shoulder again. More red had seeped through. Not catastrophic, but enough to shorten the clock. "All right," Nadine said, mostly to herself. "Here is what we are going to do. We are not moving the rock. We are not dying poetically. We are going to be deeply boring and medically responsible until help arrives." Alden's mouth twitched. "Sounds awful." "It is. Endure it." She took a small flashlight from her bag and set it near his face to track his pupils when needed. She tore open a packet of clotting gauze and reinforced Sable's bandage. She gave Alden tiny sips of water from a cap, careful not to let him drink too much. She checked his pulse every few minutes and made him answer questions he found insulting. "Full name? Alden Cross. Age? 47. Where are you? Under half a mountain." Specific enough. At one point, when his eyes began slipping away again, she asked, What color is Sable's collar? Moss green, he breathed. What does the tag say? His fingers tightened faintly. Stay. Good, Nadine said. Do that. The word hung there between them. Stay. For Sable it had once meant obedience. For Alden now it became a task. Not heroic, not grand, almost humiliating in its simplicity. Stay awake, stay breathing, stay in the bright, cruel, beautiful world. Above the ridge, clouds began gathering in loose white herds, not storm clouds yet, just afternoon weather rising from the lake. The light changed by degrees, gold became softer, shadows lengthened under the pines. Nadine heard movement in the distance once and lifted her head, but it was only a branch settling. Sable heard it too, then gave a low, tired whine. I know, Nadine told her. They're coming. Whether she meant Clay, Harlan, or something more merciful, she could not have said. Alden's breathing grew rougher. Nadine adjusted the blanket, checked his side again, and felt the cold beginning to creep into his skin despite the summer warmth. Shock did not care about sunlight. Shock was an old thief. It entered politely and left with everything. She leaned close. Alden, look at me. His eyes opened with effort. I need you to give me 1 more hour. Don't know if I have one. You do. You a doctor now? No, worse. I'm a widow who has already lost one stubborn seal. I'm not collecting another. Something moved across his face then. Not fear, not humor. Permission, perhaps, to stop pretending he was only a burden. Sable pressed closer to him. Nadine let her this time. The three of them waited beneath the stone arch while the ridge held its breath. Nadine did not save Alden Cross that afternoon. Not yet. She did something less glorious and more difficult. She kept death from feeling welcome. Alden began to drift after the sun moved behind the higher pines. It did not happen all at once. He did not fall unconscious like a stone dropped into deep water. He slipped by degrees, a man walking backward through fog, still answering when Nadine called his name but taking longer to find the way back. Alden, she said. His eyes opened. Full name? Alden Cross. Where are you? Sunbreak Ridge. Who is with you? His gaze moved with effort. You. Sable. Good. What color are Sable's eyes? His mouth tightened as if the question had reached somewhere tender. Amber, he whispered. Light amber. Like pine sap in sun. Nadine paused. It was the first beautiful thing he had said since she found him under the stone. Then his eyes shifted again, no longer fixed on the ridge. The muscles in his jaw tightened. His free hand curled in the dirt. Cross? Nadine leaned closer. Stay with me. Alden's breathing changed. It was not only pain now. Pain had a rhythm. This was something else. Shorter, trapped, full of a place that was not Minnesota. His pupils narrowed against a brightness only he could see. No, he said so quietly Nadine almost missed it. Tobias, don't. Sable lifted her head. The dog, weak and bleeding through the bandage, dragged herself closer. Nadine reached to stop her, then didn't. Sable pressed her muzzle into Alden's palm and held still. Alden flinched. Then his fingers recognized fur. His breath snagged, broke, and slowly returned to the present. Nadine watched the change with a tightness in her chest. She had seen men come back from memory before. In field hospitals, in recovery rooms, in grocery stores when a dropped metal tray sounded too much like a weapon. People thought the past lived behind a person. They were wrong. Sometimes it waited in the bloodstream, patient as winter. That's it, she said, though her own throat felt rough. You're here. Sunbreak Ridge, white pines, bossy widow, injured dog, extremely poor afternoon plans. Alden blinked at her. Bossy widow, he repeated. That is the correct medical term. A faint breath left him. Not quite laughter, but near enough to count. The radio cracked against Nadine's knee. Frost, copy. She snatched it up. I copy. Harlan's voice came through more clearly now, though still warped by distance. Clay is on the south track. He's moving slower than expected. Mud's bad. I'm above the lower washout with 2 volunteers, but we've got to cut east around the creek bed. How long? 25 minutes to a higher visual, maybe more to reach you. Nadine looked at Alden's face. Sweat had gathered along his hairline, though the air was cooling. He's fading in and out. Circulation in the trapped leg is poor, breathing shallow. Dog is bleeding through the shoulder wrap. I hear you. There was something in Harlan's tone she did not like. Harlan. A pause. Describe the rock again. Flat slab, maybe 4 feet across at visible edge. Pinning right thigh and hip. Looks like it slid from the upper seam and locked against packed clay. Upper slope cracked. Water running through. Any anchor points? Nadine looked up. The 2 white pines stood above the cut, their roots gripping the ridge like old hands. Beyond them, another pair of trunks leaned together, crossed by age and weather. 2 mature pines above the shelf, maybe 15 feet apart, another pair farther right, angled, roots exposed but deep. Do not rig yet. I know. I mean it, Nadine. The use of her first name, stripped of radio formality, carried an old fear. Nadine had known Harlan Voss for years. He was a square-built man with a silver mustache, a rescue jacket faded orange from weather, and the habit of touching the pocket where he kept his little waterproof notebook. In that notebook were maps, call signs, equipment checks, and one name he never spoke unless he had to. Miles Redding, 26. Volunteer lost during a river rescue because someone had said, just try a little more pull. Ever since, Harlan treated the word just as if it were loaded. I'm not moving the stone, Nadine said. Good, because if that slab is bearing tension from the upper shelf and you shift it wrong, you won't just lose him. You'll lose yourself. I said I'm not moving it. And I'm saying it twice because I know what desperate people do. Nadine looked down at Alden. He had gone pale again. Sable's muzzle remained in his palm. Yes, she said softly. So do I. The radio hissed. Then Harlan said, keep him talking. Give me landmarks. I'll guide you when I can see the slope. The signal faded before she could answer. Keep him talking, as if words were rope. Nadine checked Alden's pulse. Faster now, thready. She adjusted the emergency blanket around his shoulders and gave him another tiny capful of water. Most of it wet his lower lip. Swallow. He did. Good. His eyelids fluttered. No. Don't go quiet on me. How many steps from your shop door to the dock? Alden's brow moved faintly. What? You heard me. 16. Wrong. His eyes opened a fraction. What? I've been there. It's 18. A weak annoyance crossed his face. Depends. Which door? Nadine almost smiled. There you are. Shop door to dock is 16, he whispered. House door is 18. You have too many doors. Old boat shed. Excuses from architecture. Noted. Sable gave a low breath that might have been agreement. For several minutes, Nadine asked him small questions. What kind of wood was the canoe he had been repairing? Cedar. What was wrong with Maeve's diner coffee? Too strong to be legally served after noon. What was the name of the gull that stole toast from his dock? He had not named it. Nadine accused him of lying. He admitted with visible shame that he had called it Admiral. You named a toast thief Admiral. It has command presence. It has criminal tendencies. Same thing sometimes. There it was again. A flicker of the man beneath the damage. Dry humor. A stubborn spark, not enough to warm the whole cold room of him, but enough to prove a fire had once burned there. Then the spark dimmed. His gaze slipped past her shoulder. "Tobias," he said. Nadine froze. The ridge seemed to lean in. Alden's fingers tightened in Sable's fur. "Wall came down. Dust everywhere. Couldn't see. He pushed me first. Stupid bastard pushed me first." Nadine said nothing. Her mouth had gone dry. "He was coughing blood after," Alden whispered. "Said it was nothing. Said he'd had worse from your cooking." Despite herself, Nadine breathed out a laugh so sharp it hurt. "He said that?" Alden's eyes were not fully present, but his face changed at the sound of her voice. "Said if I told you, you'd kill him before the enemy got a chance." "He was right." Alden swallowed. His throat worked with effort. "He saved me. Got hurt doing it. Shoulder, ribs, lung bruised. He came back anyway. Later, another op, another rescue. He shouldn't have been there." Nadine's hand curled around the radio so hard the plastic edge bit her palm. "Alden." "If he hadn't pulled me out." His breathing roughened. "If he hadn't taken that hit, maybe he would have been stronger. Maybe he would have." "No." The word cut clean through the dust and birdsong. Alden's eyes found hers. Nadine felt the anger arrive, not as flame but as weight. Snow on a roof, quiet, heavy, dangerous if ignored. "No," she said again, lower. "You do not get to do that." His face tightened. "Do what? Turn Tobias into a bill you think you're supposed to pay?" Alden stared at her, dazed and wounded. "Tobias saved you because he chose to, not because you tricked him, not because you were weak, not because the universe made some dirty little trade and left you with the receipt." The words shook, but she did not stop. He was a grown man with infuriating courage and terrible handwriting. He made choices, sometimes beautiful choices, sometimes reckless ones. I loved him for the first kind and wanted to throw a skillet at him for the second, but they were his. Alden's mouth moved. No sound came. Nadine leaned closer. "You did not kill my husband by surviving." For a moment the whole ridge seemed to hold still. Even Sable stopped panting. Alden's eyes shone, though whether from pain, fever, or something older, Nadine could not tell. "I didn't come," he whispered. "After. I should have faced you." "Yes," Nadine said. The answer struck him harder than comfort would have. "You should have. That part is yours, not his death, not his choices, your silence. That one you can carry." A tear slid from the corner of his eye into the dust at his temple. Nadine let it be. Mercy did not always mean softening the truth. Sometimes mercy was cutting the wrong chain and leaving the right one in a man's hands. The radio broke the silence. "Frost!" Nadine lifted it without looking away from Alden. "Go!" "Clay's 10 minutes from your lower approach. I'm moving to the upper line. I may have eyes soon. How's Cross?" "Still with me." Alden gave the slightest nod as if confirming a status report. "Good," Harlan said. "Keep him that way." "I'm trying." "Try harder." The line clicked out. Nadine looked at the radio. "He's lucky I respect chain of command only in emergencies." Alden closed his eyes for a second. "He sounds scared." "He is." "Of the rock? Of being wrong." Alden understood that. It showed in his face. Men like Harlan and Alden knew the theology of wrong decisions. They knew how one mistake could become a name, so people spoke carefully forever. Sable tried to stand. This time her legs failed. She slid sideways with a soft, terrible sound. Alden moved before Nadine could stop him. It was not much movement. A jerk of the shoulder, a twist of the torso, an instinct older than injury, but it shifted his trapped hip just enough for the slab to grind. Pebbles spilled from the seam above. "Stop!" Nadine slammed a hand against his chest, pinning him down with all her weight. Don't move! Sable! I see her. She fell. I see her. His eyes were wild now, fully awake in the worst way. Help her. I will. But if you move again, this rock may finish what it started, and then she will bite me for failing to save you. I am not getting judged by a four-legged patient today. Alden stared at her. For one strange, suspended second, the absurdity landed between them like a dropped tin cup. Then he laughed. It was not a full laugh. It was broken, breathless, and immediately punished by his ribs, but it was real. So real that Sable lifted her head, startled, and Nadine felt something inside the whole terrible afternoon loosened by a single thread. There, Nadine said, though her own eyes stung. Still alive enough to be amused. Excellent prognosis. Alden grimaced. Hurts to laugh. Then don't enjoy yourself too much. She crawled to Sable, keeping low and careful not to disturb the slope. The dog's eyes tracked her, amber and tired. Nadine reinforced the bandage with fresh gauze, then checked the gums. Pale but not white. Not yet. You are a very inconvenient animal, Nadine murmured. Sable licked her wrist once. Nadine stopped. The gesture was small, weak. Trust offered without ceremony. She had spent 8 years avoiding creatures that needed too much. Need was dangerous. Need asked a person to step beyond the neat fence of survival. Tobias had needed the world, and the world had taken him. But Sable's tongue touched her wrist, warm and tired, and Nadine felt the fence inside her bend. Fine, she whispered. I like you too. Don't make a production of it. Behind her, Alden said, She does that. Nadine looked back. Wins arguments by existing? Yeah. She's good. She's the best thing I didn't deserve. Nadine returned to his side. Careful. That sounds like the beginning of another wrong debt. He closed his eyes. Maybe. No maybe. The wind shifted then, carrying a distant sound from the south track. A voice. Nadine! She rose just enough to see through the trees below. A figure moved between the trunks. Dark jacket, tan uniform shirt beneath, one hand raised to steady himself on the slope. Beneath, one hand raised to steady himself on the slope. Deputy Clay Orman was leaner than most men expected from a small-town lawman, built more like a tired fence post than a wall. He had a long face, a slightly hooked nose, and eyes that always looked suspicious of weather, machinery, and human optimism. Mud streaked his black duty pants. A radio bounced against his chest. Even from a distance, he looked annoyed enough to be useful. About time, Nadine called. Clay stopped, breathing hard. Nice to see you too. You bring rope? Rope, splint, and Harlan's blood pressure in my ear the whole way. Then you brought too much. Clay reached the edge of the slide, took one look at Alden, and the humor left his face. Cross. Alden managed. Clay, you look like hell. Working on a second opinion. Clay crouched carefully, scanning the slope. He did not rush in. That earned Nadine's respect. Clay was blunt, not stupid. Harlan's above, Clay said. He's trying to get visual from the ridge lip. Says nobody pulls anything until he says. He's right, Nadine said. Clay blinked. Don't tell him that. He'll become unbearable. The radio on Clay's shoulder snapped. I heard that. Clay looked at it. Good. Save me repeating it. Harlan's voice came through sharper now. Frost, Orman, I have partial visual. I can see the twin pines. Nadine, look up and to your right. You see the crossed trunks above the cut? Nadine turned. 2 old pines leaned toward each other at the ridge edge, their trunks crossing like the handles of giant shears. Their roots spread into the hillside beyond the cracked shelf, deeper and safer than the nearest trees. I see them. Good. That may be our anchor, not for lifting, for controlled pressure relief, low angle. We ease, not raise. Clay looked at Nadine. Alden looked at Sable. Nadine looked at the stone pinning Alden to the earth. For the first time since she had arrived, the problem changed shape. It was still dangerous. It still had teeth. But it was no longer only a waiting game against shock and falling rock. It had become a plan, not a miracle, not a heroic gamble, a plan. Nadine keyed the radio. "Talk me through it," Harlan answered at once, slowly. Nadine felt the old fear step close again, eager to lead, eager to remind her what happened when brave people pulled too hard against the weight of the world. She looked at Alden, at Sable, at Clay kneeling in the mud, at the crossed pines above them, old and stubborn and rooted deep. Then she tightened her grip on the rope. "Slowly," she said. "That I can do." Harlan Voss reached the upper lip of the slide with mud up to his shins and the face of a man who had been arguing with gravity for most of his life. He did not come crashing through the brush like a rescuer in a storybook. He came carefully, one hand out, testing every step before trusting it. Behind him, 2 volunteers carried rope bags, a collapsible backboard, and the frightened silence of people who understood that the mountain had not finished deciding what it wanted. The first volunteer was Ruth Bellamy, a retired Forest Service trail worker in her early 60s, narrow-shouldered but hard as a fence staple. Her gray braid was tucked into the back of her faded green cap, and she moved across bad ground with a patience that made younger people look foolish. Shh! The second was Owen Maddox, 29, a mechanic from the marina with large hands, a sunburned neck, and eyes that kept flicking toward the broken shelf as if he expected it to breathe. Harlan dropped to one knee above the cut and studied the scene. Below him, Nadine Frost crouched beside Alden Cross with one hand against his neck, counting pulse. Deputy Clay Orman was half kneeling near the slab, his tan uniform shirt streaked with mud, a section of broken sapling in his grip. Sable lay a few feet from Alden, bandaged shoulder darkening again, eyes open and fixed on him with the grave accusation of a queen disappointed in her court. No one looked heroic. That was the first thing Harlan trusted. Heroic people pulled too hard. "Nobody moves fast," Harlan called down. Clay looked up. "Good. I was hoping we'd schedule panic for later." "Panic is canceled," Harlan said. "We're over budget." Even Nadine glanced up at that, and for 1 second the fear on the ridge had a crack in it. Then the stone gave a small, ugly tick. Everyone went still. Alden's eyes were closed. His breathing had turned shallow and uneven again. Nadine looked up. "He's slipping." "Keep him with you," Harlan said. "I'm attempting that." "Attempt harder. If you survive this, I'm throwing that radio at you." "Acceptable." Harlan motioned to Ruth. "Anchor on the crossed pines, double wrap, friction hitch, no shock load. Oh, and secondary line on the left trunk, but don't tension until I tell you. Clay, you're my hands below. Nadine, you stay on Cross's airway and shoulder unless I call for the pull." Nadine's eyes sharpened. "I'm closest to his torso. If you relieve pressure, I can slide him." "You do it on my count." "I know. I'm saying it because I like living with fewer ghosts." The sentence landed without drama, which made it heavier. Nadine did not answer. She only nodded. Ruth began working the rope around the crossed pines. Her movements were calm, economical, almost tender. She had spent decades repairing trails after storms, cutting fallen branches, rebuilding switchbacks, and teaching summer hikers that sandals were not a personality. She knew trees the way other people knew neighbors. She tested the bark, the root flare, the angle of force. Only then did she call, "Anchor holds if the hill holds." "That is not comforting," Owen muttered. Ruth looked at him. "Comforting gets people killed. Useful gets them home." Owen swallowed and went quiet. Below, Clay eased the broken sapling under the visible lip of the slab, not to pry it upward, but to create a tiny controlled gap if the rope relieved pressure. The plan was delicate and unglamorous. Not lift the rock, not fight the mountain, not win. Merely persuade weight to shift half an inch at the right angle, long enough for human hands to pull Alden free. Nadine leaned close to Alden. "Alden, open your eyes." He did not. Sable whined. Nadine tapped Alden's cheek once, not hard, but with insult. "Don't embarrass me in front of your dog." His eyelids fluttered. "There, good. What's your name?" He breathed in. "Alden. Full name. Alden Cross. Where are you?" A long pause. His jaw tightened. Not here, Nadine realized. He was drifting again. The ridge fell away from his face. The pines became smoke. The stone became concrete. The smell of mud became dust and burned metal. His fingers clawed once in the dirt. "Tobias," he whispered. "Don't lift it. Don't." Nadine put her hand over his. "No, not there. Not then." His breathing shortened. Sable dragged herself another inch closer despite the bandage, despite the weakness. Nadine wanted to stop her, but Alden's hand found the dog's fur and held on like it was the last rope in the world. Nadine changed tactics. Tobias was afraid of geese. Alden's eyes opened, unfocused. Clay, despite himself, glanced over. "What?" Nadine kept her gaze on Alden. "Big man, special operator. Could stare down armed men. Could not cross my aunt's yard if the white goose was loose." Alden's face twitched. "He told you?" "He didn't have to. I watched him climb onto a picnic table holding a pie." Clay coughed. From above, Ruth said, "Was it a good pie?" "Blueberry." "Then the goose had motive." Alden made a sound rough and barely human, but it was laughter trying to remember its job. Nadine seized it. "He burned toast too, constantly. Claimed the toaster had a personal vendetta." Alden's eyes focused a little more. He said, "You like tea." "I hate chamomile." His lips moved. He drank it. He pretended he liked it because he thought it made him look romantic. It made him look sleepy and mildly betrayed. Clay shook his head. "Men have died for less." Nadine did not look away from Alden. "So don't you make him into marble. He wasn't marble. He was a man. He snored if he slept on his back. He forgot birthdays unless I wrote them on the milk carton. He once called a quiche an egg pie in front of my mother." Alden's eyes fixed on her now. There he was. Not safe, not stable, but present. "Tobias," Nadine said softer, "was not a monument. He was mine, and he was ridiculous. Stay here and I'll tell you worse things." Alden breathed out, trembling. "Blackmail." "Medicine." Sable's muzzle rested on his wrist. Her breath came shallow but steady enough to count. Alden, without seeming to know it, matched her rhythm. In, out. Not a command this time. A bargain between two wounded creatures. Harlan watched from above, his hand raised. The ropes were set. Ruth had anchored the primary line around the crossed pines and redirected it through a pulley clipped to a rescue strap. Owen held the secondary white-knuckled but ready. Clay had positioned himself low beside the slab, one knee braced in the mud. Nadine slid one arm beneath Alden's shoulders as much as she could without moving his trapped hip. "Listen carefully," Harlan said. "We are not pulling him yet. We are taking strain. Ruth, quarter tension. Owen, nothing until I call it. Clay, watch the slab. Nadine, if anything shifts wrong, you let go and flatten." Nadine looked up sharply. "No, that's not a discussion. I'm not letting his upper body twist under that stone. And I'm not losing you to prove a point." The two of them stared at each other across the slope, separated by rock, rope, sunlight, and the names of people both had failed to save in different years. Then Alden spoke. "She'll listen." Nadine looked down at him. His eyes were open, weak, yes, afraid, yes, but clear. You don't know that, she said. I do. There was no command in it, only trust, given from a man who had almost none left to spare. It changed something in her, not by softening her, by steadying her. All right, she said, but nobody is dying dramatically. I've made my position clear. Clay nodded. Strong policy. Harlan lifted his hand. Ruth, take tension. The rope tightened. At first nothing happened. The ridge held its breath. Then the slab made a low sound, not a crack, not a break, but a groan from deep inside weight. Alden's body tensed. Nadine felt him fight the scream and hated him for it. Breathe, she said. Do not be noble. Noble is medically useless. His teeth clenched. A sound tore out of him anyway, raw and short. Sable tried to lift her head, couldn't. Hold! Harlan called. Ruth froze. Clay leaned close to the slab. Gap opened. Tiny, maybe half an inch. That's enough to start, Harlan said. Clay, place the wedge. Slow. Clay slid the broken sapling section into the new space using both hands, moving like a man handling a sleeping snake. Pebbles slid from the upper seam. Owen whispered something that might have been a prayer or profanity. The mountain accepted both languages. Secondary line, Harlan said. Light tension, light Owen. Owen pulled. Too much. The rope snapped taut. The slab shifted with a sudden grind. Stop! Harlan barked. Owen froze, face draining white. Below the stone pressed against Alden's trapped leg, and Alden's whole body arched despite Nadine's grip. Sable barked once, sharp and furious, then collapsed back with a whine. Nadine's voice cut through the panic. Everyone stop breathing for 1 second. Strangely, they did, even Owen. Nadine looked up at him, not cruelly, not softly either. Light means light, she said. This is not a truck stuck in mud. Owen nodded, shaking. I'm sorry. Be sorry later. Be useful now. Ruth placed a hand over Owen's on the rope, guiding the pressure. With me, she murmured. Feel before you pull. Harlan waited until the slope settled. Then he continued. No speech, no inspiration, just work. Quarter tension. Hold, wedge, ease, breathe, again. Each small adjustment bought another fraction of space. Clay's arms trembled from holding position. Nadine's back burned. Alden's face had gone gray with pain, but he stayed conscious because Nadine kept dragging him back with questions, insults, and undignified stories about Tobias Frost. Tobias once tried to fix the sink, she said. Alden's lips parted. Oh, bad? He flooded the pantry and blamed water pressure. Clay muttered, classic. He also believed folding towels was a government conspiracy. Ruth, from above, said, he was right about fitted sheets. Do not encourage the dead, Nadine said. Alden gave a broken breath that could almost pass for amusement. Then Harlan called, ready for extraction. The air changed. This was the part no one wanted to name. All the preparation, all the careful increments, and still there would be one moment when human bodies had to move faster than stone. Harlan, Nadine said, his right leg may not clear clean. I know. Clay, when I call, you draw the hip low and left. Nadine, shoulders and spine. Do not pull upward. Ruth, hold primary. Owen, stabilize secondary, on 3 only, not before, not after. Clay looked at Alden. His dry expression had vanished. Cross, this is going to hurt. Alden's eyes flicked to Sable. Sable stared back. I know, Alden whispered. No, Clay said. I mean a lot. Alden's mouth curved faintly. You always... this comforting? Only with friends. Nadine slid both arms under Alden's shoulders, bracing her knee in the mud. She could feel the heat of him through the torn jacket, feel the tremor in his muscles, feel how hard he was working not to leave. She bent close. Remember what the tag says? Alden's eyes shut once, then opened. Stay, he said. Harlan raised his hand. 1. Ruth leaned into the rope. 2. Clay gripped Alden's belt and hip line. 3. The ridge groaned. Nadine pulled low and back. Clay hauled with her. The slab scraped Alden's trapped leg, and this time he screamed. A sound pulled from a place beneath pride, beneath training, beneath every lesson that had ever told him silence was strength. The sound tore through the pines. Then his body came free, not gracefully, not cleanly. He slid from beneath the slab in a rush of mud, dust, torn fabric, and human pain, collapsing against Nadine's chest as Clay caught his lower body and dragged him clear. Clear, Clay shouted. Release tension slow, Harlan yelled. Ruth eased the rope. The slab settled back with a heavy final thud. Not a collapse, but close enough to make everyone feel how thin the margin had been. Nadine held Alden's head and neck steady. Alden, look at me. His eyes rolled once. Alden. No answer. Sable, she said sharply. Sable, talk to him. The dog tried. She really tried. Sable pushed her front paws under her, lifted her head, and dragged herself toward him with a determination that made Clay curse under his breath. Alden's eyes flickered at the sound of her claws in the dirt. There, Nadine said. See, she's coming to yell at you. Alden's gaze found the dog. His lips moved. Girl. Sable reached his hand. Then her legs folded. Her body dropped beside him too suddenly, too silently. For half a second, the rescue site forgot Alden. Nadine was already moving. She pressed 2 fingers to Sable's neck, then checked the gums. Pulse, she said. Weak. Alden, half-conscious, tried to roll toward her. Clay held him down. No. Cross, don't. Sable. She's alive, Nadine said, but her voice had lost all room for jokes. She needs out now. Harlan was sliding down from the upper line with Ruth behind him. Owen brought the backboard, face still pale but steadier now. We move both, Harlan said. Human first, Owen started. Nadine looked at him. The young man stopped. Harlan corrected calmly. We move both. Cross on the board. Dog wrapped and carried. Clay, you've got Cross's shoulders. Ruth, stabilize his leg. Owen, you carry Sable if Nadine clears it. I clear it, Nadine said, but keep her shoulder high and don't compress the bandage. Owen nodded. This time he listened like the instruction had weight. On had weight. Alden's hand reached blindly until Nadine guided it to Sable's collar. His fingers brushed the little metal tag. Stay. His eyes filled with a terror more awake than pain. She came back, he whispered. Nadine looked down at him, and for once her face had no armor. Yes, she said. Now you both have to. They secured Alden to the backboard as carefully as the slope allowed. He drifted in and out, but each time his eyes opened, they searched for Sable. Owen carried her wrapped in Nadine's emergency blanket, her gray cream head resting against his arm, ears limp, breath shallow. The trip down from Sunbreak Ridge was slow and ugly. No music swelled, no one cheered. Harlan walked backward over bad ground, guiding the board. Clay kept one hand on Alden's shoulder and one on the rope rail. Ruth called out roots, dips, slick stones. Owen carried Sable as if carrying a fragile crown that might still bite him if he got careless. Nadine walked between them, checking Alden, then Sable, then Alden again. Don't let him sleep too long, she said. I'm not sleeping, Alden murmured. Excellent. Then be awake better. His eyes shifted toward the emergency blanket in Owen's arms. Sable. She's breathing. Sable. She can hear you, Nadine said, though she did not know if that was true. Alden's voice broke into a whisper again and again as the rescue party moved through white pines, mud, and fading sunlight. "Stay with me, girl." The wheels of the collapsible litter hit the lower trail with a dull rattle. "I came back," Alden whispered. Sable's ear twitched once beneath the blanket. Alden saw it. "You come back too." And down the ridge they went, not triumphant, not safe, but moving. Two wounded souls carried by frightened hands, while the bright northern woods watched in solemn silence. By the time they reached Birchwater Clinic, the sun had lowered behind the lake and turned every window in town the color of old honey. The clinic was small, white, and practical, built beside a gravel lot where fishermen, hikers, and farmers had limped in for decades with hooks and thumbs, twisted ankles, fevers, and pride they should have left at home. On most days, it smelled of coffee, disinfectant, and wet wool. That evening, it smelled of mud, blood, pine resin, and the sharp panic of people trying very hard to stay useful. Alden Cross arrived strapped to a backboard, his red and black checkered jacket cut open, his face gray beneath dust and dried sweat. He was conscious for 30 seconds at a time, which Dr. Lenora Pike called annoying but preferable. Lenora was already waiting at the door, short, silver-haired, and stern enough to make the automatic doors seem to open out of respect. Her pale blue turtleneck was visible beneath a white coat that had seen too many winters. Thin framed glasses sat low on her nose. She took one look at Alden and did not waste a greeting. "Trauma room, now." Clay helped guide the backboard inside. Harlan followed, jaw tight, one hand still holding rope as if he had forgotten how to let go. Nadine came in beside Owen, who carried Sable wrapped in the emergency blanket, the dog's gray cream head resting against his forearm. Alden saw the blanket. "Sable?" he rasped. "She's here," Nadine said. "Where?" "Behind you." His head tried to turn. Lenora put one firm hand against his cheek and pushed it back. "You move that neck again without permission," she said, "and I'll sedate you out of spite." Alden blinked at her. Clay leaned down. "That's Dr. Pike. She means it." "I always mean it," Lenora said. "People simply survive long enough to appreciate my consistency." A second door opened near the rear hall, and Dr. Miriam Keene strode in from the attached veterinary room, pulling on gloves as she moved. She was 45, with dark curly hair tied up in an impatient knot, a moss-green scrub top under a dark denim jacket, and eyes that could soften instantly for animals while remaining deeply unimpressed with humans. She went straight to Sable. "Oh, sweetheart," Miriam murmured, her voice changing completely. "You did far too much today, didn't you?" Then she looked at Owen. "Table, back room. Keep her shoulder elevated. If you drop her, I'll make you explain yourself to her personally." Owen paled. "Yes, ma'am." "Good survival instinct." Alden strained against the straps. Lenora snapped, "Cross." "Sable. Miriam has her. You need blood pressure, oxygen, x-rays, and to stop trying to supervise everyone's profession from a horizontal position." His eyes sharpened despite the pain. "If she dies, if you tear something open before I can examine you, I'll have 2 patients making poor decisions instead of 1. Lenora bent close enough that only he and Nadine could hear. "Your dog got you down that mountain. Respect her work by letting us do ours." That reached him. Not gently, but it reached him. Alden stopped fighting. The clinic split into 2 worlds. And in one room, Lenora cut away fabric, checked ribs, examined the swelling along Alden's trapped leg, and ordered Clay to hold pressure exactly where she told him. In the other, Miriam cleaned Sable's wound, started fluids, checked gum color, pulse, temperature, and the deep shoulder laceration that had been forced to wait too long because loyalty had dragged it uphill and back down again. The hallway between the two rooms was no more than 20 feet. For Alden, it might as well have been an ocean. He could hear muffled movement through the wall. Metal trays. Miriam's low voice. Owen's nervous, "Yes, ma'am." Sable did not bark. That silence frightened him more than any cry would have. Lenora checked his pupils, then frowned at his leg. "Can you feel this?" Pressure. "This?" "Less." "This?" Alden's jaw tightened. Lenora saw the answer before he gave it. "All right," she said. "We'll image it. Possible nerve compression, possible fracture, significant soft tissue trauma. Your ribs are not pleased either. Will I walk?" "Eventually, if you stop asking questions I can't answer yet." "That your bedside manner?" "No, that was me being warm." Clay, still holding gauze against Alden's side, muttered, "She's much worse before coffee." Lenora looked over her glasses. "Deputy Orman, your medical contribution is silence." Clay closed his mouth. From the doorway, Harlan said, "How bad?" Lenora did not look up. "Bad enough. Not hopeless. He needs transfer if imaging shows vascular compromise. For now, he is staying awake and annoying me, which is better than the alternative." Alden whispered, "Sable." Lenora sighed. "If that dog survives, I'm billing her as staff. She has more command authority than anyone here." The door at the end of the hall opened. Miriam stepped out, gloves stained, expression controlled. Alden tried to lift his head again. Lenora placed 2 fingers on his forehead and pushed him back down with insulting ease. Miriam came to his bedside. "She lost blood," Miriam said. "The wound was contaminated with grit and bark. I cleaned it, packed it, started fluids and antibiotics. No tendon rupture that I can detect, no fracture in the shoulder, but she's exhausted, hypothermic at the edges and shocky." Alden stared at her. Miriam did not soften the next part. Kindness in her practice did not mean lying. "If she makes it through the night without crashing, I like her chances." The word "if" entered the room like winter. Alden had heard worse words: incoming, ambush, casualty. Evac denied. He had heard men pray, curse, bargain, and go quiet. He had watched smoke turn daylight into judgment. But that one small "if" reduced him to a boy lost in a church too large for his own voice. "She has to," he said. Miriam's gaze held his. "She is trying. Hard. That dog has been trying since before she reached Nadine's place." Alden's eyes shifted to Nadine. She stood near the wall, still in the mustard windbreaker, hands scrubbed clean but red from washing. Her hair had come loose around her face, dirt marked one sleeve. She looked less like a rescuer now, and more like someone who had walked through a locked room in her own heart, and had not yet decided what to do with what she found there. "She came to you," Alden said. Nadine nodded. "Thank you." She did not answer right away, then quietly, "Thank her first." He closed his eyes. Outside, Birchwater began arriving, not all at once. The town had better manners than that, or at least pretended to. But word moved faster than weather. Harlan had barely finished washing mud from his hands before Maeve Calder came through the front door carrying 3 canvas bags, 2 thermoses, and the air of a woman prepared to feed grief until it surrendered. Maeve was 54, round-faced, sharp-eyed, with gray blonde hair pinned badly under a scarf and a denim apron still tied over her blouse. She owned the diner by the lake and believed soup was both food and jurisdiction. "I brought chicken soup, bread, apple pie, and a casserole," she announced. Lenora looked up from Alden's chart. "We don't need a casserole." Maeve set the bags down. "Nobody ever needs a casserole, that's why it works." Clay opened one lid and sniffed. Maeve slapped his hand with a spoon she had apparently brought for that exact purpose. "That is for later." "What's in it?" "Nutrition." Clay took a cautious taste when she turned away. He went very still. Alden, pale and sweating, noticed. Bad. Clay swallowed with the solemn courage of a man protecting others from battlefield knowledge. Powerful. Maeve narrowed her eyes. It has lentils. Clay nodded. I suspected a weaponized legume. For the first time since the ridge, a faint warmth moved through the clinic. Not happiness, nothing so careless, but the old human magic of ordinary people bringing ordinary things to the edge of fear, food, bad jokes, clean towels, hands that did not know what to do but came anyway. Harlan stood apart near the hall, staring at his boots. Alden saw him. Harlan! The older man looked up. Come here. I'll just get in the way. You already did that on the mountain. Come here. Harlan crossed the room slowly. His orange rescue jacket hung open. Mud had dried along one sleeve. He looked older than he had that morning, as if every minute of delay had carved its own line into him. I should have gotten there faster, Harlan said. Alden breathed carefully. Bridge was out. I should have known that stretch would wash. You knew enough not to kill me getting me out. Harlan's jaw worked. Alden looked at him, truly looked. Waiting right was the rescue. Harlan flinched as though the words had struck an old bruise. For a moment the room around them fell back. Harlan was not the rescue chief, and Alden was not the injured former SEAL. They were simply two men who had both mistaken caution for failure at different times. Tell that to the part of me that wanted to pull, Harlan said. I'm telling it now. Harlan nodded once, quick and rough, then stepped away before gratitude could embarrass him. Nadine watched from the doorway. Then she left. No one stopped her. For several hours she was not at the clinic. She went home to Frost Farm because the flowers still needed watering, and because her hands would not stop remembering blood. She scrubbed them at the kitchen sink until the skin burned. She changed her shirt. She checked the greenhouse roof she had abandoned. She watered lavender that did not care who lived or died, which was both offensive and comforting. Finally, she stood in front of Tobias's boots. They were still by the door, clean, patient. She hated them for that. Don't look at me, she said. The boots did not obey. She sat on the mudroom bench and put her face in her hands. What was she angry at? Alden for surviving? No, not anymore. Perhaps not ever in the clean way anger preferred. Tobias for dying? Yes, terribly, unfairly. In a way no widow was supposed to admit because dead men were promoted in memory and could no longer defend themselves. Herself for hesitating when Sable came to the yard? Yes. That most of all. For 1 second, one shameful second, she had wanted to close the door. She had wanted to let someone else be brave. She lowered her hands. Above the coat rack was a small metal box she had not opened in years. Inside were Tobias's letters. Not the official ones, not the folded flag words, the real ones, notes from overseas, bad jokes on the backs of supply forms, a recipe for chili that began with, "Find a better cook than me." A torn photograph of him holding a mug and looking offended by mourning. At the bottom was an envelope with her name on it. She knew it, and she had read it once after the funeral and never again. Nadine took it out. Her thumb rested over Tobias's handwriting. Uneven, slanted, impatient. For the first time in 8 years, she brought the letter back to the living. When she returned to Birchwater Clinic, night had settled over the lake. Alden was propped slightly in bed, leg immobilized, ribs wrapped, an IV taped to his arm. His face was still drawn with pain, but his eyes were clearer. The room was dim except for a lamp near the sink. From the back of the clinic came the occasional sound of Miriam moving around Sable's room. Alden looked toward the door as Nadine entered. "Sable?" "Still fighting," Nadine said. He accepted the answer because he had no strength to reject it. Nadine pulled a chair to his bedside and sat. For a while she said nothing. Then she held out the envelope. Tobias wrote this before his last deployment. It was for me. But part of it was not only for me. I think I kept it locked away because if I read it too often, I might have to obey him. Alden stared at the paper as if it were a live coal. I shouldn't. No, Nadine said. You probably should. She unfolded the letter. Her voice, when she read, did not tremble. That was how Alden knew the trembling had gone deeper. Nadine, if this letter is in your hands, then I have done the one thing you told me not to do. I have left you with chores, bills, and people saying I was brave when what I mostly was unable to leave well enough alone. Please roll your eyes at them for me. Alden's mouth tightened. Nadine continued. If I die helping someone, do not let anyone make a marble statue out of me. I was not marble. I was late to everything, burned toast, and feared your aunt's goose with excellent reason. Do not let the person I helped carry me like a sentence. If they lived, good, let them live. Make them plant something, fix something, feed something, love something. A life saved should not become a room where everyone whispers. It should become noise, a dog barking, a door opening, a terrible song on the radio, anything. Nadine stopped. The clinic was quiet. Alden's eyes were wet, but no tears fell yet. He looked like a man standing before a door he had spent years pretending was a wall. I'm tired, he said finally. Nadine folded the letter but kept it in her hands. I imagine so. Not from today, I know. His throat moved. I'm tired of living like every breath is stolen. There it was. Not a confession for absolution, not a speech, just the truth, plain and exhausted. Nadine looked at him with no pity in her face, which made the mercy stronger. Then stop calling it stolen. His eyes lifted to hers. Call it work Tobias left unfinished. Alden broke then, quietly. No heroic collapse. No grand sobbing. A tear slipped down into his beard, then another. His hand lifted toward his eyes, but the IV tugged and he gave up. Nadine did not touch him. She let him have the dignity of not being managed. After a long while, a door opened at the end of the hall. Miriam appeared, tired but smiling with only one corner of her mouth, as if afraid too much hope might scare the night. She's awake. Alden tried to sit up. Lenora materialized from nowhere. Absolutely not. I need to see her. You need to remain attached to the things keeping you medically inconvenient instead of tragic. Miriam? Nadine asked. Miriam nodded. 2 minutes. No excitement. Clay, who had been half asleep in a chair outside the room, stood. I can get the wheelchair. Lenora looked at Alden. Hair. Lenora looked at Alden. If you so much as pretend to stand, I will personally make sure Sable hears about it and loses respect for you. Alden whispered, wheelchair. See? Lenora said, progress. They moved him slowly, painfully, with Clay holding one side and Lenora guarding the IV like a border sentinel. The hallway to the veterinary room was only 20 feet. Alden looked as if he crossed a continent. Sable lay on a padded table under a warm blanket, her shoulder wrapped in clean white bandage, an IV line taped carefully to one front leg. Her eyes were open, tired, amber, alive. Alden's face changed. Everything guarded in him fell away. Hey, girl. Sable's tail moved once, barely. A small, weak thump against the blanket. It was enough. Alden leaned forward as far as Lenora allowed. Miriam supported Sable's head gently. Alden lowered his forehead to the dog's, careful of tubes, bandages, pain, and all the fragile machinery by which love remained in the world. He cried then, not as a defeated man, not as a soldier. As a man who had been underwater for years and had finally found the surface, only to discover that the first breath hurt and saved him at the same time. Sable blinked slowly. Her breath warmed his cheek. Nadine stood in the doorway with Tobias's letter folded in her hand. For once, the old pocket watch at her throat felt less like stopped time and more like something waiting patiently to be wound. By late summer, Birchwater learned how to sound ordinary again. Boats returned to the lake at dawn, their motors low and steady over the blue water. The white pines stood around the shore like old sentries who had seen enough human trouble to stop commenting on it. The wild lupine along the ridge road had faded from violet to seed, their color gone quiet, as if even flowers knew when a season had said all it needed to say. Alden Cross moved more slowly now. That was the first thing people noticed, though no one with manners said it. His right leg wore a temporary brace beneath his tobacco-brown work pants, and he used a cane on uneven ground, a plain wooden one he had carved himself because the medical supply cane made him look, in his words, like a retired umbrella salesman. Dr. Lenora Pike had not laughed when he said that. She had only looked at him over her silver-framed glasses and said, "Retired umbrella salesmen usually follow medical instructions better." Alden had followed some of them. Enough to heal, not enough to satisfy Lenora, but then no living patient had ever achieved that state. His ribs no longer punished every breath. His legs still burned at night, and sometimes his foot went numb without warning. But the worst of the swelling had gone down. He had not returned to long hikes. He had not gone back up Sunbreak Ridge. Not yet. But he had opened the wide doors of the boat shop again. Some mornings the sound of sanding cedar floated across the lake. Some afternoons he sat on a stool near a half-finished canoe, pretending to work while Sable slept in a patch of sun by the door. Sable had healed too, though she carried her proof more visibly. The fur along her left shoulder had grown back unevenly around a thin scurpail beneath the smoke gray and cream of her coat. She walked carefully for the first week, then with increasing dignity, then with the full authority of a patient who had survived great suffering and expected the world to adjust its schedule accordingly. Maeve Calder had brought her boiled chicken twice. This was a mistake. Sable now regarded plain kibble as an insult delivered by cowards. "You've created a monster," Alden told Maeve one afternoon outside the diner. Maeve, round-faced and sharp-eyed beneath her crooked scarf, handed him a paper bag of biscuits. "No, sweetheart, I recognized royalty." Sable sat very straight beside Alden, accepting this correction. Alden looked down at her. "Don't let it go to your head." Sable's left ear tilted outward. It was already too late. The town did not make a parade of what had happened on Sunbreak Ridge. Birchwater was not that kind of place. Its gratitude came in quieter forms. Firewood stacked without asking, fresh bread left on porches, spare radio batteries appearing at Harlan's rescue shed, someone fixing the broken latch on Alden's boat shop, and denying involvement with a suspiciously deputy-shaped silence. People stopped Alden sometimes, but not often. They nodded. They asked about Sable first. This suited him. Sable, after all, had earned better press. Nadine Frost returned to her greenhouse 3 days after the rescue. She did not declare a new life. She did not announce healing. She simply replaced the cracked roof panel she had abandoned when Sable came bleeding into the yard, swept the first aid shed, and washed the examination table twice. Then she did something that made the entire lower ridge road slow down as people passed. She put 4 wooden chairs on the farmhouse porch. One had a split in the backrest. One leaned slightly to the left. One had belonged to Tobias, though Nadine did not tell anyone that. The fourth was small and sturdy, dragged from the greenhouse, with a cushion that smelled faintly of lavender and rain. Beside the trail, she hung a plain white sign with black painted letters. Coffee, water, first aid, and a chair if you need one. That was all. No name, no charity, no memorial fund, no grand opening, no speeches with folded hands and moist eyes. Just a sign, and yet, in Birchwater, it became a kind of lamp. The first person to stop was an older fisherman named Dale who claimed he only needed to refill his canteen, then sat on the porch for 9 minutes staring at the field. Nadine gave him coffee and did not ask why his hands shook. The second was a woman from the trail crew with a blistered heel. The third was Harlan Voss, who arrived with a spare radio unit, 2 batteries, and a face that suggested he would rather fight a bear than admit tenderness. "For the shed," he said, setting the radio on the porch rail. Nadine looked at it. "This is expensive." "It's old. It works." "I said old, not useless." She looked at him. Harlan touched the pocket of his orange rescue jacket where the waterproof notebook still lived. "If someone comes needing help, they shouldn't have to hope the mountain is in a generous mood." Nadine accepted the radio without making him say anything else. Some gifts were too shy to survive being thanked loudly. Maeve came next with a pie. "People can't heal on an empty stomach," she announced. Nadine looked at the pie. "Is this for the people or for you to monitor the people?" "Yes," Maeve said. Deputy Clay Orman began checking the road every other afternoon. Somehow every check required coffee, sometimes 2 cups if the safety of the county demanded it. He claimed the porch had a good line of sight toward the ridge. Nadine claimed he was a freeloader with a badge. Both things were true. Alden did not come at first. He sent a repaired hinge for the first aid shed door, then a sanded board for the porch step, then a small wooden box for bandages finished smooth with oil and fitted with a brass latch. Each object appeared quietly like an apology made in cedar. Nadine let him do it, and she knew better now than to mistake a useful silence for absence. When Alden finally came in person, Sable walked beside him, slow but bright-eyed, her moss-green collar clean, the little metal tag catching the sun. "Stay." Alden carried a toolbox in one hand and leaned on his carved cane with the other. His red and black checkered jacket hung open over a gray Henley. His beard had been trimmed, though not by much. He looked thinner than before the accident, older perhaps, but less absent from his own body. Nadine was on a ladder near the greenhouse, tightening a strip of flashing. "You're limping," she called down. "You're on a ladder." "Observation for observation. Fair trade." He looked up at the roofline. "That panel's not seated right." "I know. You want help?" "No." He waited. Nadine sighed. "Yes." He smiled faintly and set the toolbox down, and they worked badly together for the first 20 minutes. Nadine was accustomed to doing things alone, because alone did not require explanation. Alden was accustomed to doing things silently because silence had protected him for years. This meant both of them reached for the same tool at the same time. Neither asked for what they needed, and Sable eventually lay down in the grass with the expression of a foreman watching amateurs destroy morale. "You could say, 'Hand me the wrench,'" Nadine said. "You were holding it." "You could still say it. You looked busy." "I am always busy. That is not useful information." Alden considered this. "Hand me the wrench." Nadine gave it to him. "See, civilization." He tightened the bracket. "Barely." They worked better after that. The greenhouse roof caught the afternoon light and scattered it over the flowers below. Lavender brushed against the open door. Bees moved from bloom to bloom with the grave purpose of monks copying scripture. The day was warm but not heavy. The lake wind reached even this far from shore. No one spoke of Tobias for a long while. No one had to. He was there in the repaired roof, in the old chair on the porch, in the pocket watch at Nadine's throat. In the way Alden no longer looked away when his name moved near the conversation. That was the new thing, not peace. Peace was too clean a word, room. There was finally room. A week later, Nadine asked Alden if he would go with her to the cemetery. She asked while refilling coffee on the porch, as if inviting him to help move a table. Alden's hand stilled around the mug. Sable lifted her head. "You don't have to," Nadine said. "I know." He looked toward the field where the afternoon wind pushed silver through the grass. "I should have gone years ago." "Yes," she said. He nodded once. "Then I'll go now." The Birchwater Cemetery sat on a low hill above the lake, fenced in white wood shaded by maples and pines. It was not a military cemetery, no perfect lines of identical stones. People rested there the way they had lived, slightly uneven, beside spouses, cousins, fishermen, school teachers, old mayors, infants from older, harder winters, and one former SEAL named Tobias Frost, whose grave looked toward the water. Nadine walked slowly, Alden walked slower. Sable moved between them, careful on her healing shoulder, occasionally stopping to smell what history had failed to keep solemn. At Tobias's grave, Nadine brushed pine needles from the stone. Alden stood with both hands on the cane. For a long time he said nothing. Then awkwardly, "Hey, Tobias." Nadine's mouth trembled. Alden glanced at her. "Too casual." "He would prefer it." Alden nodded. He looked back at the name carved in stone. "I'm not going to make a speech," he said. "You hated speeches, mostly because you were bad at them." A breeze moved through the maples. Sable sat beside the grave, her tail curling around her paws. Alden swallowed. "Your dog would have liked Sable," he said. "Actually, no. You would have pretended not to like her because she would have stolen your chair." Nadine laughed once, a wet, broken sound. Alden kept going, voice low. "She came to your house, bled all over Nadine's yard, probably ruined a rug." "Matt," Nadine corrected. "Matt," Alden said. "She found the one person stubborn enough to come back up the ridge for a man too stupid to save himself." Sable leaned against his leg. Alden looked down at her, then at the grave. "I'm sorry I didn't come before. That part was mine. I carried the wrong things and avoided the right ones." Nadine's face changed, but she did not interrupt. "I don't know how to do this next part," he said. "Living like it's work instead of punishment. But I'm trying." The lake flashed beyond the trees. "I fixed the hinge on Nadine's shed," he added after a moment. "It squeaked like hell. You would have noticed." Nadine wiped her cheek. "He would have complained for weeks." "I know. He'd also say you used too much oil." "I did not." "He'd say it anyway." Alden smiled then, small, real, and sad in a way that did not ask to be cured. They stood there until the sun lowered. When they left, Nadine did not look back right away. At the gate, she touched the stopped pocket watch at her throat, then let it fall against her chest. Watch at her throat, then let it fall against her chest. For the first time, the stillness of it did not feel like a locked door. That evening, Frost Farm glowed under a sky turning violet at the edges. The porch light came on before dark. Nadine had replaced the old bulb with a warmer one, and it spilled gold over the chairs, the steps, the water bowl near the rail, and the new radio Harlan had left. The sign by the trail moved gently in the wind. Coffee, water, first aid, and a chair if you need one. Alden sat on the porch step, one leg stretched carefully before him. Sable lay with her head on his boot, keeping him pinned in place with the full moral authority of a creature who had saved his life and expected compliance. Nadine came out with 2 mugs of tea. He looked suspiciously at one. "Chamomile? Mint. Good. I wouldn't do that to you." "You might." "I might," she admitted. He took the mug. For a while they watched the field. Maeve's truck passed slowly on the road, slowed even more near the porch, then continued with exaggerated innocence. "She's spying," Alden said. "She brought pie this morning. She has earned limited surveillance rights." Clay's cruiser rolled by 10 minutes later. "That one is definitely spying," Alden said. "That one wants coffee." Sable sighed as if exhausted by the entire species. Nadine sat beside Alden, not too close, not far away. Between them rested a silence that had changed its shape. It was no longer avoidance. It was no longer the heavy silence of rooms where grief kept all the furniture covered. It was the kind of silence people entered when they had stopped demanding that pain explain itself every minute. Alden looked toward the trail sign. "The trail sign. You know people will come." "I know. Some won't talk. That's why there are chairs." He nodded. The porch light hummed softly above them. Moths gathered around it, foolish and faithful, throwing themselves against brightness as if brightness might explain them. Alden's hand lowered to Sable's head. His fingers found the scar at her shoulder, then the collar, then the little tag. "Stay." He did not say the word aloud. He did not need to. From then on, people in Birchwater told the story in their own way. Some said Sable was the dog who ran bleeding down Sunbreak Ridge. Some said she found the widow who kept the first aid shed. Some said she saved Alden Cross, but those who had seen the porch light burning at Frost Farm understood it differently. Sable had not only found help, and she had found two souls standing on opposite sides of the same locked door, and with a wounded shoulder, a stubborn heart, and muddy paws on Nadine's best mat, she had dragged them both toward the light. Sometimes healing does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes as a wounded dog at the door, a porch light left on, a chair waiting for someone too tired to speak. Alden, Nadine, and Sable remind us that being saved is not weakness. It is grace, and sometimes God sends that grace through the quietest messengers. A loyal animal, a kind neighbor, or one brave step back toward life. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like more stories of loyalty, healing, and hope, please subscribe. May your home always have a light on, and may peace find you gently.